They say don't look down. That's the first rule they teach you on the first day. If you look down, the vertigo gets into your knees, turns your legs to jelly, and that's when you make a mistake. Up here, a mistake doesn't mean a bad day at the office. It means you turn into a wet spot on the pavement. But for the last 4 days, looking down is the only thing I can do. Or looking in. Day 4. I think it's day 4. My watch battery died on the second night. Or maybe I just forgot to wind it. Time feels different when you're floating. It stretches out like taffy. I'm currently parked outside the 82nd floor, apartment 82B. The penthouse suite is above me, the corporate offices are below. I call this guy the statue. He's been standing in that corner, staring at the beige wallpaper for 6 hours. He hasn't moved. He hasn't blinked. I tapped on the glass earlier with my squeegee handle. Usually that gets their attention. Usually they throw themselves at the window, teeth snapping, eyes rolled back so far you only see the whites. But not the statue. He's waiting. They're all waiting now. I never thought I'd die in a bucket. That's what we call it. The cradle, the stage, the basket. To me, it's just the bucket. 6 feet long, 2.5 feet wide. Aluminum railing, anti-slip floor, 2 motor winches, and enough rope to hang yourself with. This is my world now, this 15-square-foot island in the sky. My name is Elias. I wash windows for the richest people in the city, and I have the best seat in the house for the end of the world.
It started on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday is the north face. The wind hits the north face harder than the rest of the building, channeling off the bay. It makes the cables sing, a low, humming vibration that you feel in your teeth. Marcus was running the roof rig. He's the guy who checks the counterweights, makes sure the davit arms are locked. He's been doing this for 20 years. He always brought me a coffee, black, 2 sugars, before I went over the edge. "Wind's picking up, he said. I remember he was looking at his phone, frowning, not at the weather app, but at the news. Some riot downtown, police closing off the bridge. I didn't care about riots. I cared about the wind speed. If it gusts over 25 miles per hour, we don't drop. The meter read 18. Safe. I hopped over the parapet. The drop always gives you a little kick of adrenaline, no matter how many times you do it. 110 stories. That's a long way down. The air up there is thinner, colder. It smells different, like ozone and airplane exhaust. I had my bucket of soapy water, my squeegee, my scraper, and my lunch. Turkey on rye, an apple, a bottle of water. If I had known that apple was the last piece of fresh fruit I'd see, I wouldn't have eaten it so fast. I would have savored it. I would have eaten the core. The job is meditative. You get into a rhythm. Wet the glass, scrub the grime, blade it dry. Check for streaks. Lower the basket. Repeat. You become invisible up here. People inside the building, they don't see you. They look right through you. I've seen arguments, I've seen affairs, I've seen people crying alone at their desks. I'm just part of the weather to them, a giant bug stuck to the windshield. I was on the 85th floor when I heard the first siren. Not the usual city noise. You get used to the background hum of traffic. It sounds like the ocean from this height. This was different. It cut through the wind. Then another, then a dozen. I turned around, leaning against the safety rail. From 800 feet up, you lose the details. People are just pixels. Cars are matchbox toys. But I could see the patterns breaking. Usually, the traffic flows like blood in a vein, orderly. Red lights, green lights. But down there, the veins were clotting. A bus had jackknifed across 3 lanes. Cars were driving the wrong way. And the sound, it started to rise, a collective scream. It drifted up the side of the building like heat. I looked back inside. Floor 85, some investment firm. 10 minutes ago, they were discussing quarterly earnings. Now they were glued to the windows. I saw a guy in a blue suit, looked like the boss, shouting at someone on his cell phone. He was red in the face. Then he stopped. He looked at the phone, tapped it, shook it, threw it against the wall. Network crash.
That was the first domino. I grabbed my radio. Marcus, you seeing this? Static. Just a hiss. Marcus, come in. Wind's getting weird. Thinking about coming up. Nothing. Then the power cut. The Aethelgard is a smart building, LEED Platinum certified, fully automated, integrated AI security. When the city grid destabilized, the building went into lockdown mode. I found out later what that meant. It meant the blast shutters on the lower floors closed. It meant the elevators grounded. And it meant the external power couplings for the maintenance rigs were severed to prevent unauthorized access. The cradle dropped 6 inches, a safety brake catching, and swung hard. My water bucket tipped. I watched 2 gallons of soapy water plummet toward the chaos below. It wouldn't even reach the ground. The wind would tear it apart first. I hit the manual override switch. Nothing. I hit the emergency ascent button. Dead. I was a marble in a jar and someone had just screwed the lid on tight. "Hey!" I yelled. I banged on the glass with my fist. "Hey! I'm stuck! Can you open a window?" Stupid. I knew the windows didn't open. It's a climate-controlled, sealed ecosystem. But panic makes you stupid. Inside the boardroom, the meeting had turned into a brawl. But it wasn't a fight over money. One of the junior associates, a woman in a gray skirt, she had collapsed. 2 colleagues were bending over her. I watched, nose pressed against the cold glass, as she sat up. It wasn't a groggy wake-up. It was a snap, like a marionette having its strings yanked. She lunged. She latched onto the neck of the guy helping her. Blood sprayed against the inside of the window. A bright arterial red smear right in front of my face.
That was the moment the world ended. Not with a nuclear flash, but with a bite in a boardroom on a Tuesday afternoon. I watched them tear each other apart. It took 3 minutes for that room of 12 people to turn into a slaughterhouse. And the worst part? I couldn't hear a thing. Just the wind whistling in my ears and the creaking of the steel cables. It was like watching a horror movie on mute. When night fell, the city lit up, but not with streetlights. Fires, massive ones. I could see the smoke plumes blotting out the stars. The cold up here, it's insidious. It finds the gaps in your clothes. I curled up in the corner of the basket, using my empty bucket as a windbreak. I ate half my sandwich. I didn't want to, but my stomach was cramping. I tried to climb the ropes. I got maybe 20 feet up before my arms started to shake. The wind was gusting to 40 miles an hour now. Without the stabilizers, the cradle was swinging 5-6 feet out from the building, then slamming back against the glass. Bang, bang, bang. I had to tie myself to the railing with my safety lanyard just so I wouldn't get bucked off. I checked my pockets. A phone with no signal and 12% battery, a pocket knife, a roll of electrical tape, a squeegee, a scraper, and half a sandwich. Around 3 a.m., I woke up from a doze. The wind had died down a little. I heard a sound, not the wind, a scratching, like a dog at a back door. I looked up. She was there, the woman in the gray skirt, or what was left of her. She was pressed right up against the glass, inches from my face. Her eyes, they weren't human. They were filmed over, like a shark's eyes when it bites. She saw me, she wanted me, and she started banging her head against the reinforced glass. Thump, thump, thump. I moved to the far side of the cradle. It didn't matter. The glass is triple-paned, hurricane-proof. She wasn't getting out, and I wasn't getting in. That's when I realized the cruelty of my position. I was safe from the infected. They couldn't reach me. But I was trapped in a cage of air, starving, freezing, forcing to watch them. I realized something else as the sun started to bleed into the sky on day 2. The electric motors were dead, but the manual winches weren't. They are mechanical, hand-cranked. It takes about 500 rotations to move the cradle 10 feet. It's grueling work. It burns calories I can't afford to lose. But it means I can move. I can go down
I can go up. I'm not just stuck in front of the boardroom. I have the whole building, 110 stories of windows, 110 stories of pantries, kitchens, and horror. If I was gonna survive, I had to go window shopping.
There's a specific math to dying slowly. You start doing calculations you never thought you'd have to make. I have 2 manual winches, one for the left cable, one for the right. To move the cradle down one floor, roughly 12 feet, I have to turn each crank 60 times. That's 120 rotations for 12 feet of vertical drop. I'm currently on the 82nd floor. I need to get to the 75th. That's where the sky terraces are, the apartments with actual balconies, open air, accessible doors. That's 7 floors, 840 rotations. It sounds easy. It's not. Not when you haven't had water in 24 hours. Not when your muscles are filled with lactic acid from the cold. Every turn of that handle feels like I'm lifting a truck. I take breaks every 10 floors of rotations. I have to. My hands are raw. I tore up my safety vest to wrap them, but the friction is eating my skin. While I rest, I watch the show. Floor 80. Marketing department looks like. No bodies here, just abandonment. Coffee cups left steaming on desks that are now cold mold farms. A jacket on the back of a chair. It's eerie how quickly a place loses its soul when the people leave. It's just furniture and plastic. I stared at a framed photo on a desk for 20 minutes. A guy, his wife, 2 kids at Disney World. Mickey Mouse ears, sunburns, smiles. I wondered where that guy was now. Was he the one I saw smeared on the lobby glass 80 floors down? Or was he one of the lucky ones who called in sick on Tuesday? I hate the hope. Hope burns more energy than cranking. The smoke is getting bad. The city is burning itself out. The updraft carries the soot right up the face of the Aethelgard. My throat tastes like burning rubber and barbecue. I have to get to the balconies. I need water. My tongue feels like a piece of dry felt in my mouth. I licked the condensation off the glass this morning, but it wasn't enough. It just tasted like window cleaner and dirt. 7 floors. Just keep turning. Left hand, right hand. Left hand, right hand. Don't look down. Look at the prize.
I call it the aquarium, because that's what this is. I'm swimming on the outside, looking in at all these little isolated tanks of life and death. The glass is thick, soundproof, UV resistant, impact resistant. I can't hear them and they can't hear me unless I bang on it. Floor 78, apartment C. There's a dog in there, a golden retriever. It saw me. It ran to the window, tail wagging at first, then dropping between its legs. It's hungry. I can see its ribs. There's a bowl in the corner, flipped over, bone dry. I sat there for an hour, just looking at that dog. I pressed my hand against the glass. It pressed its nose against the other side, fogging it up. I'm sorry, buddy. I can't help you. That was the hardest part so far. Watching the monsters is easy. Watching the victims, that breaks you. Next door, 78D. The neighbor wasn't as lucky as the dog. This guy, he was a pacer. That's my classification for them. Some are statues, like the guy on 82. Some are pacers. They have this restless energy, like electricity is misfiring in their brains. He was bouncing off the walls, literally. He saw me. He didn't wave. He threw himself at the window with such force I thought the glass would crack. It didn't. He just bounced off, slid down, leaving a grease smear, and got right back up to do it again. His nose was broken, flattened against his face. He didn't care. I cranked the handle. Click, clack. Goodbye, neighbor.
Floor 75. The sky terraces. Finally. I locked the winch brakes. The cradle was hovering parallel to the balcony of Unit 75A. It's a corner unit, wraparound terrace, high-end stuff, probably $5 million pre-apocalypse. Now, it's worth exactly 1 bottle of Evian and a can of tuna. The gap was 4 feet. In a gym, on a mat, 4 feet is a hop, a skip. At 800 feet, with a 20-mile-per-hour crosswind, 4 feet is the Grand Canyon. I had to time the swing. The wind pushed the cradle out. 5 feet, 6 feet, then gravity swung it back in. I unclipped. I know. Marcus would have killed me. Never unclip E. Never. But the lanyard would have jerked me back into the void. I waited for the inward swing. 1, 2. I jumped. I hit the rail hard. Bruised ribs, definitely. But I was solid. I rolled onto the expensive slate tiles and just laid there. Solid ground. Or as close to it as you get up here. I was on the balcony, but I wasn't inside yet. The sliding glass door was locked, of course. Why would they leave it open? I crawled to the door. I peered inside. Unit 75A. Dark, heavy curtains drawn partially closed. I couldn't see any movement. I pulled out my glass scraper. It has a heavy steel handle. I didn't want to shatter the whole door, too much noise. I aimed for the locking mechanism. The sound of breaking glass is incredibly loud when you haven't heard anything but wind for 2 days. I froze, waiting for a scream, waiting for the pacer from upstairs to come crashing through the ceiling. Nothing. Silence inside. I slid the door open. The air inside hit me. It didn't smell like death. It smelled like lavender and stale coffee. I stepped inside.
First priority, water. I went to the sink. Chrome faucet looked like it cost more than my car. I turned the handle. Hiss! A sputter of air. Then a brown trickle. Then nothing. The building's pumps were dead. The rooftop tanks must be drained or the pressure was gone. Damn it, I whispered. My voice cracked. I opened the fridge. The light didn't come on. Warm air wafting out. The smell of spoiling milk. But there, on the middle shelf, the Holy Grail. I drank it all. Half a pitcher of Brita-filtered, slightly warm water. It was the best thing I have ever tasted in my life. I could feel my cells rehydrating. I could feel my brain turning back on. I scavenged the rest of the kitchen. A box of artisan crackers, a jar of peanut butter, 2 cans of expensive imported olives. No survival rations, just rich people snacks. It didn't matter. I shoveled a handful of crackers into my mouth. I was safe. I was fed. I was watered. I sat on the kitchen floor, leaning against the dishwasher. I closed my eyes for a second. Just a second. I let my guard down. That's the second rule of high-rise work. You never get comfortable. I heard the floorboard creak. I froze. Peanut butter stuck to the roof of my mouth. I slowly reached for my scraper, which I'd left on the counter. I turned my head toward the hallway. Standing there, in the shadows, holding a stuffed rabbit, was a little girl, maybe 7 years old. She was wearing a pink nightgown. She stared at me. "Are you the window washer?" she asked. Her voice was tiny, human. But then she stepped into the light. She wasn't asking. She was repeating something she'd heard before she died. She dropped the rabbit, and then she screamed.
They don't tell you how strong they are. You see a 7-year-old girl in a pink nightgown, and your brain says, "Child, fragile." Your brain is wrong. She hit me like a linebacker, all bone and wiry muscle and snapping teeth. I fell back, my head cracking against the stainless steel fridge. The world went white for a second. I felt cold little fingers digging into my forearms, trying to pull my hands away from my throat. "Window washer," she hissed again. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a sound she was making while she tried to kill me. A broken record skipping on the last human thought she ever had. I kicked out, catching her in the stomach. It felt like kicking a bag of wet sand. She flew back, crashing into the island, but she didn't stop. She didn't even pause for breath. She rebounded instantly, clawing at the floor tiles, screeching. I swung the scraper. It's a heavy tool, solid steel handle, 4-inch razor blade. I'm not going to describe the sound it made. There are some sounds you don't put into words because you don't want to give them more power than they already have. I'll just say she stopped moving. I stood there, gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at my arms, scratches, deep red welts where her nails had dug in, but no bites. The skin wasn't broken deep enough for saliva transfer. I hoped. God, I hoped. Then I heard it from the back of the apartment. Heavy footsteps, not a child's footsteps. Emily? A deep guttural voice, mimicking. Emily, time for bed. The father. He was huge. A wall of dead meat blackened the hallway. He saw me standing over his daughter. He didn't mimic anything then. He just roared. I grabbed the jar of peanut butter, I grabbed the crackers, and I ran.
I hit the terrace. The wind slapped me in the face, cold and shocking. I tried to close the slider. Jammed. The glass shards I'd broken earlier were stuck in the track. The father was 10 feet away, plowing through the coffee table. I turned to the rail, the cradle, my bucket, my life raft. It was gone. The wind had picked up. The cradle was swinging wild, a pendulum over the abyss. It was 8 feet out, starting its return swing. I heard the father hit the doorframe behind me. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I was dead. I climbed up onto the balcony railing. It was slick with rain that had started to fall. I balanced on the 4-inch metal bar, toes gripping for life. The cradle swung in, 6 feet, 4 feet. The father grabbed my ankle. His grip was like a vice, cold and crushing. I kicked. I felt his nose crunch under my boot. His grip slipped. I pushed off. For 1 second, I was flying. No rail, no rope, no building. Just me and gravity and the gray sky. I hit the cradle. I hit the basket like a sack of bricks. My ribs screamed. I felt something pop. The impact sent the cradle swinging wildly outward, spinning on its wire. I scrambled to the bottom, staying low, gripping the floor grating until my knuckles turned white. The world spun. Sky, building, ground, sky, building. I looked back at the balcony. The father was leaning over the rail, snapping his jaws at the air. He watched me swing away. He looked disappointed. I lay there for a long time, just listening to the wind and the wheeze in my own chest. I checked my loot. 1 jar of peanut butter, 1 box of crackers, and a life.
Night 3 or 4, I've lost count again. I moved the cradle down to the blind spot between floors, the interstitial space. Concrete and steel beams, no windows, no audience, just me and the structure. I rigged the tarp. It's a pathetic shelter, flapping in the wind, but it keeps the rain off. It's freezing tonight. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. I ate a spoonful of peanut butter. It stuck to my throat. I couldn't swallow it. I kept seeing the girl, the pink nightgown, the way she moved. Window watcher. They remember. That's the terrifying truth I learned today. They aren't just rabid animals. The circuitry is broken, but the hard drive is still spinning. They remember who they were. They remember words. Does that make it murder? When I put that scraper through her chest, was she still in there somewhere? The scratches burn. I cleaned them with the filtered water. A waste of water maybe, but infection up here is a death sentence. Even a normal infection. If I get a fever, if I get too weak to crank the winches, I die in this bucket. I need a plan. I have food for maybe 3 days if I ration, water for 2. I can't go back to the sky terraces. The father knows I'm here. He'll be waiting. He'll tell the others. God, do they talk? Do they communicate? I have to go down, or I have to go up. Down is death. The street is a swarm. Up Up is the roof, the maintenance hatch. If I can get to the roof, maybe I can find a way into the mechanical rooms. Maybe there's a radio. Maybe there's a way out. But the roof is 30 stories up, 3,600 crank rotations, and the wind is getting stronger. I couldn't sleep. The pain in my ribs was a hot poker every time I breathed. I sat up and looked out at the necropolis. It's beautiful in a sick way. The fires have died down to glowing embers. The city is a skeleton of light and shadow. Then I saw it. West, the Orion Tower. It's a residential block about a mile away. A light. Not a steady electric light, a flash. Dot, dot, dash. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. Maybe it was a reflection. Maybe I was hallucinating. Dot, dot, dash. It repeated. Someone was up there. Someone with a flashlight. Someone who knew Morse code. I don't know Morse code. I'm a window washer, not a sailor. But I know a pattern when I see one. That wasn't random. That was a call. I grabbed my inspection light. It's a tiny LED thing, probably invisible from that distance, but I had to try. I aimed it at the Orion. I clicked it on, off, 3 fast clicks, 3 long clicks, 3 fast clicks. SOS, the only code everyone knows. I waited. The wind whistled through the cables. My heart thumped. The light on the Orion Tower went dark. I waited 5 seconds, 10. Then it flashed back. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. They saw me. I'm not alone in the sky.
We developed a language. It took an hour of trial and error, freezing my fingers off while holding that little metal button down, but we figured it out. 1 flash for no, 2 flashes for yes, 3 for I don't understand. I asked the first question. Flash, flash, flash. Are you safe? A pause. The wind howled. Flash, flash. Yes. Are you alone? Flash, flash. Yes. Do you have food? A long pause. The light on the Orion flickered weakly. Flash. No. My heart sank. Whoever was over there, man, woman, kid, they were worse off than me. I had a jar of peanut butter and a box of crackers. They had a flashlight and a high place to die. Can you see the infected? I signaled. Flash, flash. Are they on your roof? Flash. No. Come to me. Flash. No. Of course, they were trapped too. Maybe barricaded in a penthouse. Maybe stuck on a roof with the stairwell blocked. We were 2 castaways on separate islands, waving flags across an ocean of monsters. But that connection, it changed the chemistry of my blood. Before the light, I was surviving out of instinct, fear. Now, I had a reason. Someone knew I was here. If I died, the light would go out, and that person over there would be alone again. I couldn't let that happen. I signaled one last thing before the cold forced me to stop. I am going up. The light flashed back rapidly. Flash, flash, flash. Cheering, or warning. I chose to believe it was cheering.
The climb to the roof was a pilgrimage of pain. I started at dawn. I was at floor 74. The roof is floor 110, 36 stories, 4,320 rotations of the handles. My ribs were a jagged orchestra playing a symphony of agony. Every time I pulled the crank down, I felt the bones grinding. I had to time my breathing. Inhale, crank, exhale, scream internally, repeat. By noon, I hit the 90th floor. The air changed here. I entered the cloud layer. The city below, the fires, the wrecks, the roaming dead, disappeared into a white mist. The sound dampened. It became terrifyingly quiet.
just the creak, groan of the cable, and my own wheezing breath. It felt like I had left Earth, like I was floating in a white void. Floor 95, executive levels. I drifted past a corner office. The fog swirled around the basket, making it hard to see inside. But I saw him, a man in a tuxedo. He wasn't raging. He wasn't running. He was cleaning. He was holding a piece of cloth, wiping the window from the inside, over and over, a frantic circular motion. His eyes were dead, his jaw hung loose, but his muscle memory was scrubbing a spot of blood on the glass. He looked at me as I passed. He didn't stop scrubbing. He just watched me with those milky eyes while his hand kept working. "Missed a spot," I whispered. Hysteria was bubbling up in my throat. I had to swallow it down. If I started laughing, I wouldn't stop.
Floor 110, the summit. The winch is locked. I was at the top of the line. The davit arms, the steel cranes that hold the cradle, were jutting out above me like gargoyles. The wind up here was a physical assault. It tore the tarp off my shelter in seconds. I watched my roof fly away, disappearing into the white fog. Now came the hardest part. The cradle hangs below the davit arms. To get to the roof, I have to climb out of the basket, shinny up the steel cable, grab the davit arm, and pull myself over the parapet wall. On a good day, with a healthy body and a safety harness, it's a tricky maneuver. With broken ribs, torn hands, and no safety line, it's suicide. I grabbed the wire. It was slick with grease and condensation. I pulled. My ribs exploded. I think I blacked out for a second, but my hands stayed locked. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I wrapped my legs around the wire and pushed, inch by inch, worming my way up. The wind swung the wire back and forth, slamming me into the side of the building, then swinging me out over the nothingness. Slam, grunt, climb, slam, cry, climb. I reached the davit arm. Cold, wet steel. I threw my arm over it. I hooked my elbow. I pulled myself up, scrambling, boots kicking at the concrete lip of the roof. I rolled over the wall. I hit the gravel. I kissed it. Wet, sharp, tar-smelling gravel. I was off the side. I was on top of the world. I lay there for 10 minutes, letting the rain wash the sweat off my face. I checked my body. I was still in one piece. My hands were bleeding again, soaking the bandages, but they worked. I sat up and looked around. The roof of the Aethelgard. It's a landscape of industrial machinery. Massive HVAC fans, cooling towers, elevator housings. And in the center, the maintenance shed. That shed was my goal. Inside, there would be a radio, a first aid kit, maybe a master key card. I stood up, swaying like a drunk. "Okay," I said to the fog. "Let's see who's home."
I moved through the maze of machinery. The fog distorted everything. Shadows looked like monsters. Vents sounded like growls. Then I saw it, near the maintenance shed door. It wasn't an infected. It was a nest. She was perched on a pile of garbage and treasure. A woman in a shredded red dress. She was crouched on her haunches, knees up to her ears. Unnatural flexibility. She was holding a seagull, raw, feathers and all. She was tearing into it with her teeth. This wasn't a shambler. This wasn't a pacer. This was something else. She had adapted. She had built a home. I froze. I was 20 feet away. Between me and the door to the shed, my only hope for a radio was the harpy. She stopped chewing. She snapped her head up. She sniffed the air. The wind was blowing toward me. She couldn't smell me, yet. But then the wind shifted. She clicked, like a bat. Echolocation?
or just madness. She started to crawl down from her nest, slowly, stalking. I gripped my scraper. It felt like a toothpick. I was on the roof of the world, nowhere left to climb, with a creature that ate seagulls and collected Rolexes. And then, from the fog behind me, I heard the metal door of the roof access stairwell, the one that was supposed to be locked, creak open. I turned. A man stepped out. He was wearing a tactical vest, a gas mask, and he was holding a rifle. He looked at me. He looked at the harpy. He raised the gun.
I expected a boom. I got a whisper. Thwip, thwip. The man fired twice. Professional, dispassionate. The woman in the red dress, the harpy, didn't even reach the ground before the second bullet hit her. She spun in the air, a rag doll of bloody silk and bone, and crashed into a cooling vent. She twitched once, claws scraping the metal, then went still. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. The man didn't lower the rifle. He pivoted, the barrel swinging smoothly until it was pointed directly at the center of my chest. I froze. I was on my knees in the gravel, hands half raised, bleeding, starving, and shaking from adrenaline. He walked over to me. He didn't run. He didn't check the body of the harpy. He knew she was dead. He approached me like I was an unexploded bomb. Hands. A voice crackled from a speaker on his vest, digitized, flat. I held my hands up higher. The bandages were soaked red. Turned, knees. I turned around on my knees, exposing my back. I expected the third thwip. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the punch of a bullet. Instead, I felt a gloved hand grab my collar. He yanked it down, exposing my neck. Then he checked my arms. Rough, efficient movements. He was checking for bites. Clear, the voice crackled. He grabbed my arm and hauled me up. My ribs screamed, and I let out a jagged cry. He ignored it. He shoved me toward the open door of the stairwell. Move. Asset secured. Asset? I wasn't a survivor. I was inventory.
The door slammed and the world changed. Outside was chaos, wind, and the wet, organic smell of the nest. Inside was sterile. The air was dry, filtered. It smelled like a hospital waiting room. The red emergency lights bathed everything in the color of a dark room. Walk, the soldier said. He prodded me with the barrel of the rifle. We went down, 1 flight, 2 flights, floor 108. The door to the 108th floor was reinforced. Welded steel plates had been bolted over the glass observation panels. The soldier punched a code into a keypad on the wall. Beep, beep, boop. The lock mag released with a heavy thunk. We stepped into the fob. It was the mechanical plant for the upper floors, huge pipes and humming generators, but someone had turned it into a bunker. There were 4 of them total. The cleaners, I called them in my head. No names, just insignias on their shoulders. A stylized hawk gripping a lightning bolt. Aegis Security Solutions. I knew the name. They were the private contractors the Aethelgard hired for high-value asset protection. Mercenaries in expensive suits, or in this case, expensive armor. The one at the computer, a woman, her helmet off, showing a severe buzz cut and a scar running through her eyebrow, didn't even look up. "Is he bit?" my captor said, pushing me into a plastic folding chair. Ribs broken, dehydrated, possible lacerations on hands. "Can he work?" "He climbed the davit arm, he can work." I coughed, holding my side. I'm thirsty." The woman finally looked at me. Her eyes were cold, assessing. She grabbed a plastic bottle of water from a crate and tossed it. It hit me in the chest. "Drink," she said. "Then we talk."
They patched me up, not out of kindness. You patch a tire because you need the car to drive. The medic sprayed some kind of foam on my hands that burned like fire, then hardened into a flexible second skin. He wrapped my ribs so tight I could barely take a full breath, but the grinding bone-on-bone pain stopped. While they worked, I watched the monitors. They had feeds, cameras, not just inside the building, but outside. I saw the lobby, a massacre. I saw the 50th floor, fires burning in the hallways. And I saw the roof, a camera aimed right at the David arms where I had just come from. "You watched me," I rasped. "You watched me climb up?" The woman, command, I assumed, nodded. She was stripping down a pistol, oiling the slide. She oiled the slide. Click-clack. "Our mission is containment and asset retrieval. We are locked in just like you. The building AI, Mother, triggered a level 5 bio-lockdown. Nothing in, nothing out. Elevators are dead. Stairwells below floor 90 are sealed with blast doors." "So you're trapped," I said. "We are temporarily delayed," she corrected. "Extraction is inbound. Chopper ETA is 4 hours. But we have a problem." She pointed at the screen. A red dot pulsed on the 88th floor. "This is the server farm. There is a hard drive in the main array. It contains proprietary algorithms. Our contract states we do not leave without it." "So go get it," I said. "We can't," she said. "The blast doors on floor 90 are sealed. We cannot breach them without triggering a structural collapse protocol. The stairwells are impassable. The elevators are dead." She turned to me, a shark smile. "But the windows," she said. "The windows on the 88th floor are not reinforced. They are thermal vents for the servers." I knew where this was going. I felt the cold creeping back into my blood. "You want me to go down there?" I whispered. "We want you to go down," she said, "in your cradle. We have a winch override tool. We can power your rig from up here. You go down to 88. You break the window, you let us in, we grab the drive, we winch you back up. Then," she pointed to the roof schematic, "then you get a seat on the chopper." It was the classic devil's bargain. Do the job, get the ride. Refuse the job and, well, they didn't say what would happen, but I saw how they handled the harpy. I saw the way they looked at their rations. I was just another mouth to feed unless I was useful. And the helicopter? The promise of extraction. To leave this glass tomb? I would have crawled through hell for that. And that's exactly what they were asking me to do. "Comm check," Command said in my ear. "I hear you," I said. I was back in the bucket, but this time I had power. I had a heavy industrial flashlight taped to the railing. I had a crowbar, and I had a gun. Well, a taser. They wouldn't give me a gun. Liability, they said. "Drop him," Command ordered. The descent was fast, smooth. The electric motors whined, a high-pitched song of civilization. I dropped through the cloud layer. The fog thinned. Floor 95. The man in the tuxedo was gone. Floor 92. Floor 90. The blast shutters were visible from the outside, thick steel plates covering the windows. Approaching target depth. Floor 88. Slow your descent. I hit the brake. The cradle jerked to a halt. I was hovering outside the 88th floor, the server farm. It was dark inside, rows of black monoliths with blinking blue lights. It looked peaceful, cold, digital. But as I swung closer, shining my light through the glass, I saw the problem. The servers generate heat. The infected are drawn to heat. The room wasn't empty. It was a hive. "Command?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "We have a problem." "Describe," she said. "It's full," I said. "It's wall to wall with them. They're nesting in the heat." "The drive is in the rack nearest the window," she said. Her voice didn't waver. "Section B4. You have your orders, Elias. Break the glass, secure the perimeter, get the drive." I looked at the glass. I looked at the crowbar in my hand. Then I looked at the 100 pairs of glowing eyes staring back at me. If I break this glass, I'm ringing the dinner bell. "The chopper is leaving in 3 hours, with or without you. Breach the window." I took a breath. I raised the crowbar, and I prayed the glass was thicker than it looked. I didn't smash it. You don't smash tempered glass unless you want a noise that sounds like a gunshot. You stress it. I wedged the tip of the crowbar into the seal between the pane and the frame. I leaned back, putting my weight into it. The cradle groaned. The glass bowed. Crack. It wasn't loud, just a sharp snap, like a dry branch breaking. But inside that silent room, it was a thunderclap. The glass spiderwebbed. Thousands of tiny fractures bloomed instantly, turning the window into a wall of white dust. I tapped the center with the heel of my hand. The entire sheet crumbled inward, cascading onto the floor like a waterfall of diamonds. The sound of falling glass woke the hive. "Breach!" I yelled into the headset. "Pull me up in 30 seconds. Mark!" I jumped inside. The heat hit me first. It was a sauna in there. 100 degrees of server exhaust and rotting meat. The smell was a physical wall. I scrambled over the first row of server racks. The infected were on the floor, tangled in the cables, trying to stand up. They were sluggish, their muscles stiff from hibernation, but they were fast enough. "Rack B4, command said in my ear. Third slot from the top." I saw it, a sleek black unit with a red handle. I vaulted a desk. A hand grabbed my boot, gray, slimy skin. I didn't look. I jammed the taser into the wrist and pulled the trigger. The hand convulsed and released. I reached the rack. I grabbed the handle. "Locked! It's locked!" I screamed. The wave of infected was rising behind me, cresting over the desks. "Pull it!" command barked. "Shear the bolts!" I pulled. The metal groaned. Then the security guard hit me. He was heavy, armored, and fresh. He slammed me into the rack, his teeth snapping inches from my nose. I could smell his breath, copper and bile. "Elias!" command yelled. I panicked. I headbutted him, my forehead against his nose. Crunch. He reeled back, stunned for a microsecond. I grabbed the handle of the drive again. I screamed, a primal, animal sound, and yanked with everything I had left. Snap. The bolt sheared. The drive slid out. It was heavy, the size of a briefcase. I hugged it to my chest and turned to run.
I threw the drive. It landed in the basket with a heavy clang. I dove after it. My chest hit the metal floor of the cradle just as 3 pairs of hands grabbed my legs. They were pulling me back in. I was half in, half out. I kicked, thrashing like a caught fish. "Up!" I screamed. "Pull me up!" The electric motors whined. The cradle jerked upward, but they didn't let go. I was being torn in half, the winch pulling up, the dead pulling down. I rolled onto my back, grabbing the railing. I looked down. The security guard had my left boot. His eyes were locked on mine. He wasn't letting go. He was climbing me. I fumbled for the taser. It was gone, dropped in the room. The crowbar. I dropped that too. I looked at my boot. It was a heavy work boot, laced tight. I reached down. My fingers, slick with sweat and blood, tore at the laces. "Cut me loose!" I yelled. But I wasn't talking to command. I was talking to my foot. I unlaced it. I kicked. The boot slid off. He fell. They all fell. A rain of bodies plummeting into the mist. I lay in the basket, gasping, staring at my sock. I started laughing, a jagged, broken sound. I had literally given an arm and a leg. Well, a boot. "Package secured," I wheezed into the mic. "Bring me home." The cradle rose. Floor 90, floor 95, floor 100. But as I approached the roof, I heard something over the radio. Not command's cool voice. Gunfire. "Contact! Rear flank! They're in the vents! Hold the line! Chopper is 1 minute out!" The roof wasn't safe anymore. I crested the wall and rolled out onto the gravel. The roof was hell. The cleaners were holding a tight perimeter. The woman, command, was firing a submachine gun with one hand, shouting into a radio with the other. "Landing zone compromised! Abort landing! Hover for extraction!" She saw me. She saw the drive in my arms. "Get the asset!" she screamed. 2 of the soldiers broke formation and ran toward me. They laid down suppressive fire, dropping infected left and right. "Give me the drive!" one of them yelled, reaching for it. I pulled it back. "No!" I shouted over the rotor wash. "Me first! That was the deal!" The soldier hesitated. He looked at command. Command looked at the approaching horde. Then she looked at the helicopter hovering 50 feet above us, lowering a winch cable with a harness. "Get him on the line!" she ordered. "But get the drive first!" They took the drive, they clipped me in.
Go! The soldier yelled, waving at the pilot. The cable went taut. I lifted off the gravel. And then the roof of the maintenance shed exploded. It was the Harpy's mate, or maybe just another alpha. It was huge, swollen with muscle, moving on all fours like a gorilla. It slammed into the soldier holding the drive. The soldier went down. The drive skittered across the roof, sliding toward the edge, toward the drop. Command saw it. She didn't hesitate. She didn't run for the helicopter. She ran for the drive. "No!" I yelled, dangling 10 feet in the air. She dove. She caught the drive right at the lip of the roof, but her momentum carried her over. She was hanging by her fingertips, the drive or her life. The Alpha was charging. It was gonna stomp her fingers loose. I looked at the pilot. I pointed down. "Drop me!" "Are you crazy?" His voice crackled in my headset. "Drop me or I cut the line!" The pilot dipped the nose. I swung down, a pendulum of vengeance. I didn't have a weapon, but I had a heavy steel carabiner. I swung past the edge of the roof. I collided with the Alpha just as it reached the edge. I used my legs to hook its neck. Newton's third law. I swung out, the Alpha came with me. We flew over the edge, suspended for a second in the gray void. Then I released my legs. The Alpha fell, silent, down into the fog. I swung back in, slamming into the wall next to Command. She looked at me, terrified. The drive was slipping from her grip. "Give me your hand!" I yelled. She looked at the drive, the mission, the billion-dollar algorithm. Then she looked at me. She dropped the drive. It tumbled away, spinning into the mist. She reached up and grabbed my harness.
They hauled us in. We collapsed on the metal floor of the chopper. The pilot didn't wait. He banked hard, diving away from the building, pulling G-forces that pressed me into the deck. I looked out the small porthole window. The Aethelgard was receding, a black needle sticking out of a sea of white fog. My bucket was still there, hanging near the top. My home for 5 days. My coffin. Command, I'd never learned her name, sat opposite me. She was stripped of her armor, breathing hard. She looked younger without the helmet. Just a person, terrified and alive. "You dropped the mission," she said. She didn't sound angry. She sounded surprised. "I dropped a hard drive," I said. "I saved the asset." She looked at me. A corner of her mouth twitched. "You're the asset, Elias?" "I'm the window washer," I said, "and I'm done with windows." I looked down at my hands. They were ruined, scarred, bandaged, shaking. I looked at my missing boot. I had lost everything. My job, my city, my world. But I had found something up there in the glass cage. I touched the pocket of my tattered vest. The jar of peanut butter was still there, half empty. I unscrewed the lid. I took a fingerful. I offered it to the soldier across from me. She hesitated. Then she took it. We ate in silence as the helicopter carried us away from the grave of the old world and into whatever comes next. The Aethelgard was gone. The glass was broken. And for the first time in 5 days, I wasn't looking down. I was looking ahead.
My name is Elias. I survived the fall. Now I have to survive the landing.